The night was thick with tension, the kind that weighed heavily on the air and wrapped around Sarah like a suffocating cloak. She stood before her mirror, staring at her own reflection, but it felt like staring at a stranger. Her heart raced, and the tumult inside her threatened to spill over. The image of her stepbrother Jake flashed through her mind, the way his laughter rang like music, and how his smile lit up the dimmest of rooms. Yet, amidst all that warmth, a fear burned just as bright. She smoothed the skirt of her favorite dress, a light blue that hugged her figure just right. Tonight would be a pivotal moment. She could feel it in her bones. She had made a promise to herself to finally let Jake know the truth, a truth that had marinated in her heart for far too long. But what if he didn't feel the same? The very thought sent a shiver down her spine. "Get it together, Sarah," she whispered, shaking her head as if that would dispel the doubts swirling in her mind. After all, they had always been close, sharing secrets, dreams, and fears. They had been partners in crime, allies against the world. Yet, what she felt now transcended mere friendship. It was a tempest of emotions she couldn't ignore any longer. Downstairs, she could hear Jake's laughter ringing out, mixing with the hustle of their friends. The sound was intoxicating, weaving its way into her thoughts like a siren's call. But she hesitated, frozen in place. How could she share something so vulnerable with someone who saw her as a sister? The irony was maddening. Taking a deep breath, Sarah gathered her resolve and padded softly down the stairs, her pulse quickening with each step. The living room was a flurry of movement. Jake was at the center, surrounded by a group of friends, animatedly recapping their latest gaming session, hands waving dramatically as he punctuated the story. He was the life of the party, confident and carefree. In that moment, he seemed impossibly far away from her truth. "Sarah, come join us," Jake called, a mischievous glint in his eyes as he turned to face her. "Or are you too busy plotting your next world domination?" She forced a laugh, but inside, she felt the walls closing in. "Just taking a breather," she replied, forcing herself to smile. "What's the plan? More chaos?" "Always." Jake grinned, beckoning her closer. The warmth of his gaze swept over her, and for a brief second, the weight of her feelings dissipated. But as quickly as it came, doubt returned, wrapping its icy fingers around her heart. Would it change everything between them? Would it mess up the easy rapport they had built? The confusion made her dizzy, and she found herself standing stalwart at the edge of the group, an outsider looking in. After an hour of jokes and playful banter, Jake's friends started to disperse, one by one, their laughter fading into the night. Sarah felt a rush of urgency as the room emptied, a mix of excitement and dread flooding her senses. This was her moment. "Jake, can we talk?" she said, her voice steady but softened with uncertainty. His brow furrowed, a look of surprise flashing across his features. "Sure. What's on your mind?" he replied, oblivious to the storm churning in her heart. She led him to the quieter backyard, where moonlight spilled across the grass, illuminating their path. The air was cooler out here, the chirping of crickets providing a soft backdrop to the chaos within her. She felt momentarily at peace, yet the buzzing in her mind only intensified. "Sarah, you're scaring me a little," Jake joked, trying to lighten the mood. But the grin on his face faltered when he noticed her expression. "Seriously, what's going on?" Her heart the loudly in her chest, inching her closer to the precipice of truth. She had imagined this moment in her mind 100 times, but now that she was here, anxiety bloomed like wildflowers inside her. I need to tell you something important," she started, but her voice wavered. "Okay, I'm ready." He stepped closer, his eyes sparkling with a mix of curiosity and concern, but as she looked into those warm brown eyes, the words choked in her throat. What if he didn't feel the same? What if she ruined everything they had? The thought was paralyzing. "Why are you hesitating?" Jake asked gently. "Whatever it is, just spill it. You know you can tell me anything." His unyielding confidence made it even harder for her to speak. Was it really as simple as that? She could say what she felt with absolute clarity, yet the enormity of her secret loomed large, overshadowing everything else. She tried again, but her tongue felt like lead. Emotion surged within her, tightening her chest. Moments felt like minutes, and she could sense Jake growing more anxious with each passing second. Finally, a nervous chuckle escaped her lips. "It's stupid, really," she offered weakly, but even as those words left her mouth, she felt them ring hollow and untrue. "Nothing is stupid when it comes from you," he pushed, a softness in his voice that nearly broke her resolve. In that split second standing under the Starsky with Jake so close, she pondered the weight of her feelings. What if this was the moment that changed everything? Just as she finally summoned the courage to speak, they heard the laughter of Jake's friends approaching from the front of the house. "Come on, Jake," one of them shouted. "We're doing one last round. Don't be a party pooper." Jake's attention shifted from her to the calls of his friends. "I'll be right there." He turned back to Sarah, his face torn between loyalty and the pull of fun. "Can we finish this later?" The chance she had been praying for slipped away like sand through her fingers. Her heart sank as he walked away, joining his friends, who completely missed the charged moment that had just transpired. Alone once more, Sarah felt a wave of confusion wash over her. The words she had wanted to say remained trapped inside her, mocking her silent pain. How was she to gather the courage to tell him what she felt if he wouldn't let her? As she stood there, thoughts racing, she understood. This wasn't just about confessing feelings. It was about the complex layers of their relationship, the kind that twisted friendships into something deeper. And here she was, unable to speak the truth while her heart screamed for her to do just that. How long could she continue like this? How long could she keep the secrets hidden in the shadows? With one last glance at the fading laughter from the front yard, Sarah turned and headed back inside, knowing the moment had slipped through her grasp, once again. To be continued. The push and pull. The day after her near confession, Sarah woke up feeling like a balloon inflating with all the unsaid words and emotions that thrummed beneath her skin. Each day felt like an endless cycle of laughter and friendship. Yet underneath, that a churning storm brewed. Jake seemed oblivious to it all, his laughter echoing through the house as he shared funny stories with friends in the living room. "Seriously, how did you guys let that happen?" Jake exclaimed, slapping his knee as he recounted a particularly embarrassing moment from the previous night's gaming session. The entire room erupted in laughter, but for Sarah the sound felt hollow. As she pulled a chair out at the kitchen table, she couldn't help but notice how natural Jake was with everyone. They teased each other, play-fighting as friends do. It stung to see him so carefree when she couldn't shake the weight of her emotions. "Hey, Earth to Sarah!" Jake called, snapping his fingers in front of her face. "You okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine," she replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Just thinking." "About what? My amazing storytelling skills?" He winked, and her heart fluttered at his charming grin. "Sure, let's go with that," she replied, playing along. But inside, she was screaming for him to understand what lay beneath her carefully constructed facade. As the day wore on, Sarah found herself daydreaming about scenarios, a world where she could tell Jake everything without fear. Imagining how his face would light up if he felt the same made her heart race. But what if he didn't? Those thoughts pulled her right back into the realm of uncertainty, rippling her resolve. Later that afternoon, she retreated to her room, hoping to gather her thoughts. There, she sank onto her bed and pulled out her journal, a place where she spilled her heart onto the pages, unfiltered and raw. Tonight, she promised herself, she would tell him. The thought pulsed through her mind, but fear beckoned her to stay silent. "You've already played this game," she chided herself. It was time for action. As evening arrived, the house was bathed in the warm glow of twilight. Sarah found Jake on the porch, seated on the swing, a can of soda resting next to him. He looked lost in thought, gazing out at the horizon. Seizing the moment, she needed to try. "Mind if I join?" she asked, approaching him with a mix of apprehension and hope. He smiled, patting the spot beside him. "Not at all, come here." As she settled in, she sensed the familiar warmth radiating from him. The swing creaked gently, a soothing rhythm that mirrored the tempo of her racing heart. "What's on your mind, Sarah?" Jake asked, his eyes narrowing slightly in concern. Her breath caught in her throat. This was it. I wanted to talk. About something important. Before she could continue, Jake interrupted with a teasing grin. Is it about that game we played last night? Because I still think I was robbed of victory. No, it's not about that. She shot back, her frustration bubbling to the surface. This is serious. Okay, he said, raising his hands defensively. I'm all ears. She could feel the tension building, her palms sweaty as she tried to organize her thoughts. I've been feeling kind of off lately. About us. Us? Jake echoed, a playful glimmer still in his eyes but with an edge of concern. Yes, our friendship and everything. The words tumbled out, rushes of truth intertwining with the fear of vulnerability. I just don't want to keep pretending that everything is the same as it always was. Jake's expression shifted from playful to serious, his brows furrowing slightly. Okay, that sounds important. I didn't realize you felt that way. Right, you didn't, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The very thought of his potential ignorance cut deeper than she anticipated. Wait, are you saying you want to distance ourselves? He leaned forward, earnestness creeping into his voice. No. You don't want to distance myself. I want to. Be closer. She realized she was raising her voice, her passion eggshelling over the edge of what should have been a calm conversation. Closeness. Like how? Jake asked, his tone shifting to cautious curiosity. With a heavy sigh, she realized her moment had nearly slipped away. I want to share something, Jake. Something that could change everything. Jake remained silent, his gaze steady and unyielding, yet not condescending. The weight of his stare felt like a warm embrace and an intense spotlight at the same time. But as she looked into his eyes, the swirling uncertainty of how he would react gripped her, her heart the painfully in her chest, each beat echoing the fears she had held for so long. The very last thing she wanted to do was break their bond with misplaced feelings. Before she could answer, the familiar sound of their friends ringing the front doorbell shattered the moment, drawing Jake's attention away. Oh man, I forgot they were coming over, he exclaimed, rising from the swing. Please, Jake, she called out, but he was already up and moving, joining the chaos that spilled into the house. Frustration and helplessness washed over her, and all the courage she had mustered seemed to evaporate into thin air. The chance to open up to him had vanished like smoke. She sat there, staring into nothingness as the sound of laughter filled the atmosphere once more. How could something intended to be uplifting feel so suffocating? Laughter, once an elixir, became a reminder of what lay just within reach. Later that evening, Sarah quietly watched as Jake rejoined the group of friends. They were laughing, their spirits high, completely absorbed in each other, and she felt like a ghost, floating through reality, yet existing on the outskirts. As Jake animatedly told stories, Sarah felt a hollowness inside herself grow. She could see how he lit up the room, and the more he laughed, the more sorrow seeped into her heart. They spent the night gaming, joking, and sharing pizza, but the intimacy she craved with Jake felt miles away. Every joke he shared with his friends illuminated a slice of their friendship that felt achingly out of reach. Sarah's heart tightened as she saw the possibility of what could be. The gap between them widened with every passing minute. Finally, as the clock reached midnight, Jake's friends began to trickle out, fatigue settling over the group. Sarah felt a moment of reprieve. Perhaps now was her chance to grasp the reins on her emotions. She would find him, talk to him, and put her heart on the line. Sarah made her way to the living room where Jake was cleaning up the remnants of their hangout. Jake, can we talk for a second? She blurted out, her heart pounding with urgency. He glanced up from stacking the empty pizza boxes, his expression softening. Of course, what's up? The moment felt charged, and she felt the energy shift between them. I know this sounds crazy, but I think there's something more between us. His brow furrowed, confusion crossing his face. More? Before she could elaborate further, the doorbell rang again, interrupting the palpable tension. A wave of disappointment washed over her as he glanced apologetically toward the door. Just a second, Jake called, slipping away before she could say another word. Sarah let out a heavy breath, frustration boiling inside her. She couldn't keep letting these moments slip through her fingers. Tonight would change everything. She couldn't allow interruptions to derail her further. But as Jake resumed his cheer and enthusiasm with their unexpected guest, the prospect of honesty felt like a distant memory fading into night. Would she ever have the courage to tell him the truth? Or was she destined to linger in the shadows, forever afraid to take the leap? To be continued. The confession. That never happened. The following days ebbed and flowed like a restless tide, each day merging into the next, each moment teetering on the brink of revelation. Sarah felt like an ocean, full of secret currents, swirling just beneath the surface, longing to crash forth, yet always pulled back by an unseen force. She observed Jake as he continued his routine, his laughter punctuating the silence of the house, his carefree spirit drawing everyone in. But somehow she felt increasingly distant, a mere spectator in her own life. Every time she gathered the courage to speak, the moment was snatched away like a dream just beyond her grasp. That night, after the impromptu visit from Jake's friends, Sarah lay awake in bed, her thoughts racing like 1,000 racing horses. Anxiety churned in her gut while the moonlight filtered through the curtains, casting shadows that danced on her walls like phantoms, reminding her of the ghosts of what could be. That evening, Jake had offered to take her out for ice cream, a promise he had made the week prior. She had smiled, thrilled at the prospect of spending time with him, but the undercurrent of tension was undeniable. Would she finally share her heart? The thought stared back at her like a challenge. When they arrived at the little ice cream shop, down the street, the vibrant neon lights illuminated Jake's smile, making her heart flutter. They shared their favorite flavors, laughter bubbling between them as they recounted funny childhood memories. It felt so normal, so comforting, and yet she could feel the weight of the unsaid words hanging in the air, thickening with every shared smile. "Sarah, are you okay? You've been quiet tonight," Jake said, his voice laced with concern, pulling her from her reverie. "I'm fine, just enjoying the moment," she replied, forcing a grin. But he wasn't convinced. "You can talk to me, you know that, right?" His gaze was piercing yet gentle, and she felt her resolve crumbling. She wanted nothing more than to unearth her truth, but the thought of his reaction brought her back into a spiral of doubt. "Yeah, I know, it's complicated," she responded, averting her eyes towards the shop window. "Complicated how?" He pressed, leaning forward, all eyes and ears. They were punctuated by the chatter of other patrons and the clinking of spoons against bowls. But to Sarah, time seemed to slow as she wrestled with the delicate balance of honesty and fear. "What if it ruins everything?" she whispered, half to herself. "Nothing can ruin what we have, Sarah. We're strong enough for anything." His words felt like a lifeline, and yet they also brought a fresh wave of anxiety crashing over her. What if his definition of strong enough didn't extend to feelings deeper than friendship? They left the shop, strolling through the warm night air, the stars twinkling overhead like a wondrous backdrop. Yet as excitement bubbled in her chest, so did the familiar dread. Jake looked at her, an inquisitive tilt of his head. "Want to go for a walk by the park?" "Sure, that sounds nice," she replied, trying to sound enthusiastic while her heart hammered away in her chest. Once they reached the park, they settled on a bench, a few flickering lamps casting a soft glow around them. The chill in the air brushed against her skin, and everything felt so perfectly ordinary and yet tinged with the urgency of a confession she desperately wanted to make. "Do you remember the day we first met?" Jake asked suddenly, breaking through her spiraling thoughts. Sarah chuckled, her mind racing back to that moment when they had clashed over silly choices for their new shared home. "Of course! You acted like a total know-it-all," she teased, playfully nudging his shoulder. "That was me teaching you how to live in style," he joked back, laughter crinkling the corners of his eyes. As the memory washed over her, a warm comfort enveloped them. Yet this wasn't the moment for nostalgia. She felt the urgency growing again, pulling at her heartstrings. "Jake, Just then, The moment was shattered by the sudden arrival of a group of rowdy teenagers, blasting music from a speaker. Jake's focus shifted, eyes widening with mirth. "Looks like the party's here," he laughed, but the interruption pierced through Sarah's courage like a knife. As the laughter and music expanded into the night, she felt herself drowning again. The chant slipped further away, and her heart sank further with each beat. She fought the urge to scream in frustration. Their conversation had been so close, yet now it felt shattered and irretrievable. "Let's get out of here," Jake said, trying to rise above the noise. "Let's head back home." As they walked back, the energy between them felt unnaturally charged, and Sarah could practically sense the walls between them solidifying again, her unspoken words turning cold and heavy. This pattern was becoming unbearable, and the weight of her feelings threatened to consume her. Later, as they finally arrived home, she felt a bittersweet edge settle in. "Thanks for tonight, Jake," she said, wishing she could have mirrored his enjoyment with the same lightness he brought. "Any time." "We really should do it more often," he replied brightly, his smile genuine and warm. And yet, as he headed to his room, she felt the opportunity swell and then ebb away, like waves moving away from the shore, leaving only regrets behind. The room seemed so cavernous and empty without his laughter. Sarah stood in the dim light of the hallway, torn between wanting to retreat to the safety of her room and climbing the walls of fear that trapped her. She could take that small step toward pushing open his door, yet the fear of rejection loomed larger than ever. That night, Sarah sought refuge in her journal, pouring her heart onto the pages, each stroke of the pen transforming her swirling emotions into words. She wrote everything, her hopes, fears, and dreams, including the burning desire that made her heart race when she thought of Jake. Lines blurred between friendship and something more. As she wrote, the small, gnawing voice of doubt whispered harshly, reminding her of the danger inherent in her longing. What if Jake didn't reciprocate? What if he, too, felt trapped, caught in the delicate web of family ties? Her heart ached, torn between the beauty of their friendship and the potential fall into something deeper. This inner struggle propelled her through the long night, with frustration overshadowing her otherwise sweet dreams. The next day, they fell back into an easy rhythm. The usual routine felt like a balm, yet beneath the facade was a boiling tide. Sarah felt suffocated by the cage she found herself in, the ticking clock reminding her of every repressed emotion and stolen moment. As they sat together on the couch, playing video games, she noticed the way he laughed so easily with her, how seamlessly their banter flowed. Each joke felt like a thin layer hiding the turmoil beneath, and she knew she had to say something. Between rounds, as they paused, Sarah turned to Jake, heart thumping savagely in her chest. "Jake, can I ask you something?" He paused, his brow arched slightly at her serious tone. "Of course. What's up?" The words formed on the tip of her tongue. Just a little more pressure, and she would finally let everything spill out. But as she stared into his warm brown eyes, the moment shattered again, sinking into the familiar dread. Just then, the doorbell rang, flinging her moment into disarray once more. "I'll get it," Jake called out, rising from the couch and heading for the door. Again, Sarah felt her heart plummet. Would she ever find the right moment? Each time she summoned her courage, life pulled her back into the realm of silence. As Jake disappeared into the hallway, Sarah knew one thing for certain. She couldn't continue living this way. The rush of feelings demanded to be unleashed, yet she felt the universe conspire against her every attempt. Right then, she resolved that no matter what happened, she would seize the moment tomorrow, today, whenever it came again. Because deep down, she knew one truth. She would rather face rejection than live another day in silence, trapped in the shadows of her heart. To be continued. The unraveling thread Sarah awoke the next morning with a simmering determination, bubbling just beneath her skin. The sun filtered through her curtains, casting playful shadows across her room, igniting a spark of hope within her. Today would be different. Today, she would tell Jake everything. With a fierce resolve, she dressed, selecting her favorite outfit, a floral sundress that made her feel confident and radiant. She looked in the mirror, and for the first time in days, she didn't see the shaky girl stepping on eggshells, but a woman prepared to speak her truth. When she joined Jake in the kitchen, he was already cracked open into lively conversation, with a couple of friends who had stayed over. The air was rich with the smell of pancakes, laughter, and an unexpected sense of normalcy. She felt the warmth radiating from the room, but as the laughter echoed around her, anticipation clawed at her insides. "Hey, Sarah!" Jake called, flashing her that bright smile that sent butterflies fluttering in her stomach. "Want to join us? We're planning on hitting the mall later." "Sure, sounds fun," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady while her heart raced. Today would be different. She could already feel the tension building between them. As the group finished breakfast, Jake playfully teased Sarah about her pancake flipping skills, and she reciprocated with jokes about his gaming abilities. But all the while, her mind buzzed with the urgency to get Jake alone, to finally share the feelings she had been harboring for so long. When breakfast wrapped up and their friends began to gather their things to leave, Sarah's moment loomed closer. "Jake, can we talk for a second?" she called out just as he was helping his friends with their bags. "Sure, just a sec," he said, wrapping up a few last jokes before finally turning his attention to her. She led him to the porch, where the late morning sun bathed them in golden light. As they settled into the quiet, she put on her most confident smile, even as her heart hammered wildly against her ribs. "Okay, what's going on? You've been acting a bit mysterious lately," Jake said, leaning against the railing and crossing his arms, regarding her with playful curiosity. "Yeah, about that," she started, her voice wavering as she nervously fiddled with her hands. "I just wanted to be honest with you about something." Before she could complete her thought, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway echoed, interrupting her surge of confidence. Jake turned, glancing toward the road. "Looks like my mom's home early," he said, an edge of excitement dancing in his voice. Right," Sarah trailed off, frustration creeping in. But she knew if she didn't say this, now it could slip away again. "Let's catch up later. We'll have the whole afternoon free," Jake promised, suddenly energized. "Yeah, sure," she replied, deflated but still holding on to the fragile hope that perhaps the conversation would come back around. Their moment shattered, they returned inside where Jake's family had begun to invade the comfortable bubble they had shared. With donuts and coffee in hand, chatter filled the air as they settled into afternoon plans. Sarah found it increasingly difficult to focus on anything other than the nagging fear that the day would slip away without her having voiced her feelings. As they all prepared to head out, Sarah felt suffocated by the bright energy of family and friends. She sought a moment alone, slipping into the bathroom to collect her thoughts before the chaos of the day fully engulfed her. "What is wrong with you, Sarah?" she whispered to her reflection, frustration clouding her thoughts. "You're just going to let this chance evaporate?" Taking a deep breath, Sarah resolved that the moment was now or never. She took a quick glance at her watch. She had barely enough time before the plans shifted again. She marched back into the living room, where Jake was busy pulling on his shoes. "Jake!" she called, catching his attention just as he stood. "Can we talk now? Like right now?" The change in her tone turned a few heads, and Jake's expression shifted to concern. "All right, what's up? Is it serious?" "Yes, very." She grabbed his hand, pulling him toward the backyard where the noise levels would drop to a low hum. Once outside, she finally faced him, the weight of everything pressing upon her. "Listen, I need you to know something really important. Please don't interrupt or joke around. It's serious." The wind rustled around them, seemingly echoing the intensity of her emotions. Jake's expression turned somber as he nodded. "Okay, Sarah. I promise I'll listen." Taking a deep breath, Sarah found herself nervous yet resolute. She could almost taste the freedom that would come with speaking her truth. "Jake." "What?" "We have is amazing. You're one of the most important people in my life, and I don't want to lose you." As the words spilled out of her mouth, she felt a rush of adrenaline surge through her. "But I have feelings for you more than just friends. I think I might be in love with you." The silence that followed felt like a raging storm beneath her skin, each heartbeat pounding in her ears. Jake's eyes widened, shock playing across his face. What? Sarah? But before he could finish, her heart raced into overdrive, thoughts spinning wildly. I understand if you don't feel the same way if this ruins everything. I couldn't keep pretending any longer. It was eating me alive and I had to tell you. Jake's expression shifted, his initial surprise softening into something akin to disbelief. Sarah? Wow, I had no idea you felt this way. She prepared herself for rejection, ready to brace for the impact that could shatter everything between them. I know it's complicated but before she could finish, an unexpected commotion erupted from inside the house. The sound of raised voices quickly drew Jake's attention. Concern flashed across his face as he turned back toward the door. What's going on? No, Jake, wait, she pleaded, grabbing his arm. Let's just stay here for a moment. And then chaos erupted. His mom stormed out, an expression of disbelief etched across her features, followed by Jake's younger sister, who rushed out right behind her, clutching a phone. Jake, we need to leave now, his mother shouted, her voice strained with urgency. Without a thought, Jake stepped away from her grasp and hurried inside. Sarah felt the weight of her heart plummet further into her stomach. She remained on the porch, tension rolling through her body as she listened to the rising chaos within the house. What's happening? She whispered to herself, nerves coursing through her. Moments later, Jake re-emerged, his face pale. The neighbor's in trouble. He had a heart attack. We need to get to the hospital now. The word sent shockwaves through Sarah. Oh my God, Jake, is he... Let's go, Sarah, he urged, urgency propelling him as he reached for her hand, pulling her back into the whirlwind that had disrupted their moment. As they rushed to the car, Sarah felt the abrupt shifting tide of emotions. One moment, she had been poised to tell Jake how she truly felt, and the next, they were plunged into chaos, racing against time, uncertainty looming like a dark cloud overhead. In the car, Jake's focus shifted entirely, and Sarah felt helpless in the whirlwind. That was now their reality. The gravity of the situation eclipsed everything else. Through the panicked energy that charged the air, there was a growing part of her that knew her attempt to confess would have to wait. As they sped toward the hospital, Sarah stole glances at Jake. The worry etched across his face stirred her heart. She longed to comfort him, to bridge the distance that now loomed between them like a chasm. When they arrived, the frantic atmosphere gripped them as they rushed past the sliding doors. Hospital staff moved with determination while families huddled in worry. It was dizzying, and Sarah could hardly process anything. Where do we go? She asked breathlessly as Jake scanned the room for direction. I'll find out, just stay. Close, he said. The moments turned to minutes with uncertainty thickening in the air. As Jake slipped away to speak with a nurse, Sarah waited, heart pounding. She longed to reach out to him, to be the support he needed, but all she could do was stand still, uncertain of her own place in this suddenly tumultuous world. In the chaos, the thought of her unconfessed feelings lingered like a ghost ever present yet impossible to grasp. What if this was the moment that changed everything? Or if life would forever spiral into moments never spoken? The emotional distance between them felt wider now and settled deeper in her chest. Waiting felt agonizing, a harbinger that the truth would remain buried. Yet deep down, she still held on to hope. And just as Jake returned, his face set, eyes filled with determination, she realized that whatever happened here, whatever fate awaited, she would find a way to share her heart. Because once this storm calmed, she wouldn't allow herself to stay silent any longer.